So good evening, good morning, good afternoon for wherever in the world are you calling in from. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for being here today. So we welcome you to another learning session by the Learning Management Group of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. Allow me to introduce to you the hosting team for the session. So my name is Anuradha Sant. Many of you may be knowing me. I am the host for this evening today, and I'm absolutely privileged to do that. With me in my hosting team, I have Tushima Mukherjee, I have Shweta Shivaraman and Nimish Rathod, who are my comrades and people who are there going to support us through the entire running of the webinar today. All of us are coaches. We are members of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter, and we volunteer with the learning management team. So we are here welcoming you yet again to this learning management offering from the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. And today's webinar topic is a deeper understanding of authenticity. And our expert speaker is none other than Norma Hollis. Norma is a change agent who impacts the world in multiple ways. She writes programs for human development around the theme of authenticity and turns them into training processes to deepen awareness and expand consciousness. Her programs infuse concepts authentically into business in multiple ways and are the catalyst for personal development, leadership, marketing, sales, management, and product development. She was the first Black woman to own a speaker bureau for Black speakers and now operates in coaching business to help people find authentic paths to success in their personal and business life. She believes all challenges can be overcome when the business and life are aligned in authentic ways. Norma is the author of Blueprint for Engagement, Authentic Leadership, and numerous other books and online training tools. Currently, she certifies coaches and facilitators to use the authenticity grid in their practice as well as within her organization. As we move to the serious topic of her discussion, a fun fact and an inspiring fact about her is that Norma enjoys making rugs using the latch hook method. She especially enjoys the design large 6x8 rugs like the authenticity grid that you will experience today that she teaches from. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it and actually experiencing them from Norma herself. Given the numerous questions and the registration that have already come as part of this session, we know that this topic is of high relevance and importance to each one of you. So without further ado, on that note, I would like to direct my attention towards Norma. So Norma, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I know this is wee hours of morning, even before sunrise for you in your part of the world. So thank you so much for doing this. And I welcome you, and it's over to you, Norma.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Anna, for inviting me here and having me here and the opportunity to be here. And I don't even think I will see the sun rise when I finish because it's like 4:30 in the morning here in Los Angeles. Although I went to bed early to prepare for you. So I'm very excited about being with you. And trust me, I am wide awake and ready for you. My voice may not have caught up yet. Hang on one second. So it's catching up now. We'll get better. So I'm delighted to share with you about the authenticity grid. I've shared it a couple of times. Goodness, my voice is really not ready to this very time. I've shared this authenticity grid twice with WBEX in earlier this year. WBEX is the World Business Executive Coaches Summit, where I host frequently. And I had an opportunity to share it. And that's when I learned how valuable it is for coaches. This is my life's work. And I'm going to give you a little bit of history about why I started it and what I understand about it. And then I'm going to tell you about the 9 dimensions of authenticity and the research that I've done and help you understand my authenticity grid. What coaches tell me is that it helps you put your area of specialty in the bigger picture. It helps you understand the bigger picture in a different way, because I come from a little bit of a different perspective, or so I'm told. So I started this work when I was 28 years old, actually. And that's when I realized I had done everything my parents had said to do. I had a husband who had a good job. We both had good jobs. We had cars. We had a nice house. We had money in the bank, all the things that they say is supposed to make you happy in life. And I was absolutely miserable. And I knew I needed to change in my life, but I didn't know what to change it to, because I didn't know who I was, because I had become my mother's version of somebody, of the Black woman in America, what she felt I should be. So then I started on this journey to understand myself. I didn't realize it would take 30 years, but it took 30 years of studying human nature from personal, professional, and spiritual perspectives, and experiencing a lot of things along the way that helped me to understand myself. And all the time I was writing about what I was learning, and writing the exercises that I used in the process of getting to know myself. When I finished writing this, I had 9 workbooks, so I call them inventories. And I printed them up and published them, and I said, so what do I do next? So I had a coach at the time who told me to go travel around the country, and well, just to go out and to share with people and see how people responded. And at that time, I had my speaker bureau, and that was when internet was really just getting started. And I had followers all across the United States. So I reached out to them and asked people to host me in their city, which they did. I went to 20 cities in 18 months, and I shared my authenticity process with them and found about 125 followers. So I knew I was on to something, but I didn't know what it was. So then I spent 12 more years working with these speakers and trying and testing and seeing how this authenticity grid works. It channeled through me over that 30-year period, and that's when I was writing to prepare it. But the 12 years of figuring out what it did really is what elevated my my confidence in what it is and how it works, and particularly when I shared it with WBEX, and then the success I have had sharing it around the world. And I now do certify people who actually help teach it and coach from it, and we're growing in a number of different ways, which I'll share with you as I go forward. But first, let me share with you the authenticity grid. So what I learned about myself and what I learned about other people is that we all have an inner voice, we have an outer voice. The inner voice, no one hears but us. No one hears that voice. So it's our own personal voice. The outer voice is how people perceive us when we walk in a room. You can walk in a room, people make an immediate impression of you. They don't have no idea what's going on the inside, but yet they think they know you. That's your outer voice. And then the expressive voice is who you are, who you have become in the world, and how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. And then I call those domains, the inner voice domain, the outer voice domain, and the expressive voice domain. Those are the verticals. Now the horizontal, you have think, communicate, and do. You can't quite see them maybe as well, but the top line is think, the middle line is communicate, and the bottom line is do. And I call those dynamics, the dynamics of how we function as human beings. And generally we are either focusing on either thinking or communicating or doing, or some combination of them. So what the grid represents is where the intersection meets of a dynamic and a domain. And that's what I'm going to explain to you now, the different energies. And I really call this an energy grid, and because authenticity to me is managing the energies that live within you. And those energies are intangible, the intangible parts of ourselves. And we have to manage the intangible part of ourselves with the tangible part of ourselves. So we have to blend the inner voice with the outer voice in order to express ourselves effectively. Essentially, that's one way that you can look at the grid, or the general understanding of it. But it gets deeper when you go into the individual dimensions and understand those from the perspective. Now, on the think level, the think horizontal, the dimensions that are in the think horizontal have to do with things you were given at birth and how you use them. So from an inner voice perspective, you were given a sixth sense. You were given the 5 senses, which are the more tangible way that the world looks at ourselves. We look and we feel what's going on within us. But our sixth sense, one thing about the sixth sense is that's different than the others is that it's only individual. I mean, we all see red and we know red and we have a general understanding of what red is or what green is. That's more tangible things. But your inner sense, your inner voice, your sixth sense, that's very, very, very personal. It cannot be regulated. It maybe it really is hard to even be understood, but we each have it. So intuition has to do with that inner voice, that intuition, that voice that speaks within you, and coming to terms with it. Now, when I talk about each of these dimensions, the objective for each of them is to integrate them in your life and integrate them with each other so that they are flowing along in alignment. Authenticity, as I have understood it, as I've come to understand it, is when the different parts of yourself come together in alignment and go in the same direction. Your personal life, your business life, the aspects of your personal life, the aspects of your business life. They find their point, their intersection of integration, and you weave those together, and that just makes synchronicities happen on a regular basis. So, and it starts again with the inner voice, and that's intuition. So when people ask me about how do I improve my intuition, the recommendation that I give is to, or the quick and easy one, there's multiple ones and multiple aspects to it, but the one that I share in presentations like this is to examine the three questions that we each ask ourselves every single day. We ask ourselves, what time is it? What am I going to wear? And what am I going to eat? And every single day we ask those questions at least one time, sometimes many times during the day. So if you examine how does the answer come to you? Generally, the answer comes in one of your senses, one of the multisensory senses. It comes through your sight. You see something, you see it. You hear something, you taste something, you touch something, you feel something. It comes through your senses. It also comes through your sixth sense. So look at and examine how your sixth sense speaks to you. Through which of the five senses does the sixth sense communicate with you? And that gives you an opportunity to see and understand how your voice speaks and how you can connect with it more and recognize it speaking to you. Because connecting with your intuition, from my objective, means creating a partnership with it. Creating a partnership with it so that you are going down life together. You are taking the guidance of your inner voice. And that's essentially what led me to do this, because I was a person who took antibiotics for 40 years for ear infections, not knowing how it would destroy my body. So I couldn't work like other people. So my life was spent in a more intuitive nature, other than other people who went to a job every day. I had to figure out how to make a life more in an independent way. And that caused me to go more inside. And that's why my perspectives are a little bit different, which is why I was able to create this, and I can share it with you now. So that's the dimension of intuition. That's the original, the beginning dimension of the authenticity grid, where authenticity begins. So then we come down to integrity, which is the second dimension of the authenticity grid for the inner voice dimension. And integrity, the horizontal there is communicate. To get things done in life, you need to first think about it, and then communicate it, and then do it. So often we do things without doing any planning or communicating first. So we communicate our inner voice through our values, through the things we believe in. One of the things that I've learned is that people who are clear on their values make decisions a lot faster, because they're clear on what they will and will not tolerate. One of the things I ask audiences all the time is, what is one value that as a global society, we all believe in, that we all share? I ask this everywhere I go, and no one's ever given me one that we can agree on. Some have said it's empathy, but I meet people all the time who don't have empathy. Some say it's compassion. Likewise, everybody doesn't have compassion. I think the drug traffickers, where's their compassion? You can go around and around. So if you can think of one, I would love to hear it, because that's, I think, something that's lacking in our society, the great seesaw of values. And when you have seesaw values, particularly within your own life, then you're not in alignment. For example, working in an environment where that are not aligned with your values, working with people whose values you do not share, or where the culture you don't share. I met so many people when I had my speaker bureau who would come to me after working for 10 or 20 years in some organizational environment and saying, I lost myself. How do I find myself again? How do I get authentic again? I don't know who I am. And that's what society does for us. So many people live what I call a manufactured life. They get on autopilot, doing the same thing day after day, not realizing who they really are and what they really want to do, having lost sight of their personal values. So where's your integrity? To what degree do you live to the values that are important to you? How have you grown beyond the values that maybe you were raised with, and at least evaluated them to see if they really are your values, or if some of them have modified or changed as you've gone through life. So integrity is really important. And once you know your values, how steadfast are you to them? How much will you actually believe in them and guide your life by them and make decisions by them? So that's the second dimension of the authenticity grid, your values. One of the things I also say about values is that if you're not clear on your values, look at the people you spend most of your time with, because generally of those who you choose to be with, some of the people you spend time with, maybe you don't choose to be with, but the people who you choose to be with, that you spend time with, and what are their values? What can you say about their values? Those are probably your values too, especially if you look for what the common thread is between those people. So that's the second dimension of authenticity grid. You communicate through your values, through your integrity. And the third is inspiration. Now, when I wrote this program, I had my speaker bureau, and there was a lot of focus then. The industry was kind of new, and everybody wanted to be a motivational speaker. And so my focus on inspiration is the contrast between inspiration and motivation. Motivation comes from the outside in. Inspiration is the inside out. And really, you don't make movement, you don't make change unless you're so inspired. People can motivate you to get up, but you need to be inspired to really move forward, to really push yourself, to really make a difference, to really stick with your values, to really follow your inner voice. So to what degree do you not only inspire yourself, but also how do you inspire others? Now, I do apply this grid in multiple ways and in multiple different industries and perspectives, which I'll share with you when I finish sharing it. But one of the things with inspiration that we talk about from a corporate perspective is how do you inspire your employees? From a corporate perspective, that domain of inner is employees. How do you treat your employees? So the energies, once they are understood, are now being applied in multiple perspectives. And so that's just one of them. And I'll share more when I finish sharing the entire dimensions for you. So authenticity begins in the inner voice. It is how you listen to yourself. Now, the way the inner voice works is your idea comes to your intuition. You get an idea, it pops in your head, and you immediately filter it through your value system. Does it fit with my values or not? And then if it fits, you may be inspired to move on it, to have a drive to move on it. So for example, you're driving home from work and you've had a tired day and you're ready to get home. You have some ideas and plans of what you're going to do, and somebody jumps in front of your car and almost causes an accident. You have to jam on your brakes and you just want to cuss them out and say some things. You really want to ram into them, but you know your value system says you're not going to do that. It happens just that fast. So that's why it's so important to really know your values so that you can make immediate responses, because they say you make 35,000 decisions a day, and you can make them with more effectiveness and with far more integrity with your own situation and your own alignment if you're clear on your values. So I will pause here and see if there are any questions on the inner voice. So Anu, you have the floor.
Yeah. So I'll welcome Tushima if there are any questions, any comments. And I'll also welcome everybody to please put in your comments any thoughts that you have, which we can pick. And just to kind of preempt it, at every column of 3 dimensions, we will pause. So this is the first pause. The second column is over, there'll be a second pause and then a third. So Tushima's here armed with a few questions and comments already. And I will invite everybody else to also continue to write in your comments for us to then relay them back to Norma.
So there's a question that's come in the chat box, and I also have all the questions that that the audience were kind enough to mention at the time of registration. Some really good questions have come in. I'm just going to take the opportunity now to maybe call out 2 or 3 of the really relevant top of the mind ones. But let's take the one which has come in the chat box just now from Pradeep. Where do you place belief in this matrix, Norma?
Beliefs goes into communicate into integrity, because your beliefs are related to your value systems. Belief is a value system. It is a value, so it goes into the integrity dimension.
Okay. Thanks for that. There's some general questions because the concept and the topic of authenticity has naturally led to a lot of curiosity. So Norma, to you, what does it really mean to be 100% authentic? And is there really, I mean, is it, if you're authentic, isn't it naturally 100%?
I don't think anything's ever 100%. It may be 100% sometimes, but I mean, what pressure on yourself to expect you to be 100%, actually almost in anything. But in authenticity, sometimes you want to say what's on your mind, but you know it's not politically correct. And so you have to manage your authenticity. Authenticity just doesn't mean go hog wild and just be yourself 100, just whatever. But you have to do it within a society that does have certain norms and restrictions and expectations. And I mean, that doesn't mean you have to abide by all expectations, because that's how we create change when someone goes outside the box. But you just have to make your own decision about that. Certainly you can choose to be 100% authentic and just go buck wild and whatever you do, but that's may not get you where you want to go in life. So you have to authenticity. Someone asked me if you edit your authenticity, and I said yes, but I think the correct answer is you manage it. You have to manage it. You have to manage your energy. You have to do that all the time. That's how we socialize our children into the world. We help them manage their energy, so they learn to do what's right and what's wrong. So you have to manage your authenticity to learn how the different reactions, if you're totally authentic, might work. I did some research on authenticity several months ago, and one of the questions that was very prevalent was, I'm afraid to speak up. I'm afraid to say what's true in mind, what I want to say. So you do have to pick and choose. You have to choose your battles. So it's hard to be 100% from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think you also answered the next question, which I was about to ask, which is what are the bounds or the boundaries of authenticity? And I think you just answered that, but I'll ask you another related question, which had come in earlier, which is how do you balance authenticity and being vulnerable at the same time?
Well, authenticity is being vulnerable for sure, because you're standing up with what you believe in, even though it may come outside of the norm. As I mentioned the words manufactured life and autopilot. And from my degree is in child and family life sciences, and my first career was directing preschool programs. So I had an opportunity to see the spirit in action, if you will, the joy and the spirit of a young person who's just realizing that they're human and all the things that they can do, and how much they come to preschool classrooms and they love to, the teacher says, come on in and, go where you want to go. If you want to do music, go over there. If you want to do the dramatic play or go finger playing or jungle gym, you have to go to the bathroom, just go. And then they take that spirit home and they start singing because they love to sing, and talking because they love words, and because their mothers and fathers are tired and busy and what have you, they tell them to be quiet and don't sing so loud. You're making too much noise. I need to take a nap. Well, whatever. But that spirit, starts to shy back. And so that's where the vulnerability begins. And that's where we begin to protect ourselves from that problem. From early childhood, they say for every negative a child receives, they should receive 5 positives to counterbalance that. And you get a lot of negatives in 2, 3, and 4, and then going on a little further. So none of us, I don't think, ever overcome that. So we're all vulnerable. But being authentic means standing in your strength in spite of the vulnerability, because it's through that that you grow. You know, they say you have to step out of your comfort zone in order to grow. Well, one way to do that is to step into the authenticity. And even though it is vulnerable, it just strengthens you up a little bit and makes you realize the power that you have personally, because things begin to kind of come together a little bit more as you gain more and more authenticity. You know, the universe wants to assist you, and authenticity is getting the universe, getting on the side of the universe. I don't say getting the universe on your side, but getting on the side of the universe so you're working together. That's a lot of what authenticity is. And the more you do that together, the less vulnerable you are, less vulnerable you feel.
And on that note of, whether it's getting it on your side or whether you getting on the side of the universe, there's a question related to this aspect of inspiration and external factors. The question came in the chat box a short while ago. Tarun posed that question. Can external factors also inspire you? Or is it only your internal value system that inspires you more?
Oh, absolutely. External factors inspire you. In fact, connecting with the universe means being able to read the message of the universe. The universe is talking to us all the time. I mean, some of you from your backgrounds, you probably have this understanding, which is not as prevalent in the Western world. But the universe is always talking to you. I had a friend of mine years ago that said, no, it's not, but yeah, it is. But this is how you interpret it and how you read it. This is something that I learned. And one of the other things that I teach about intuition. And this is what I did when I was 8 years old. That was when I had created a hole in my eardrum medically, and it was extremely painful. And the adults in my life didn't get the kind of help that I needed. And that's when the voices started speaking to me. I was walking to school one day, and I don't remember what they said, but I remember saying to the voices, okay, if you're the voice I should listen to, because I knew about those things, but never experienced it quite like this. I said, if you're the voice I should listen to, prove it to me. And let somebody show up in the next week with red socks, and let somebody else mention the word elephant in the conversation. And if that happens, maybe I'll believe it. And sure enough, in a week, somebody walked by with red socks, and someone else mentioned the word elephant. And then I did several other things in the next 5 days or so, and the voice finally said, well, do you believe me now? Because all of them came true. So that's the start of my relationship with my inner voice. And let me fast forward several decades to Thanksgiving, maybe 4 years ago. And a gentleman in Toastmasters, who was a friend of mine, came by to visit on Thanksgiving Day. We're talking some business, and we did it on Thanksgiving Day. He came by, and I looked down, he's wearing red socks. I said, oh my goodness. I said, okay, spirit, okay, universe. If this is a message to me related to, and I mentioned something I was dealing with at the time, then let somebody mention the word elephant in the conversation in the next 7 days. So about 5 days in, I heard the word elephant on a TV show. I don't know if you have Family Feud out there, but that was playing. And one of the answers was elephant. I said, well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but it's not personalized. It's not close enough to me, but it'll work maybe. And then on the 7th day, I was at a friend of mine's workshop, and she talked about how we have limiting beliefs, and how you take an elephant and you put a string on him and a string on a stake. An elephant doesn't go any further than, it goes in circles and never goes beyond that belief. That's as far as he can go. I said, oh my gosh, there it is again. But to show you the real power of it, shortly after that, I realized I had a gift that was given to me by my husband, who's no longer with us. And it was a gift he'd given. At the time, it didn't dawn on me, but this was a day I was about to give an event. And I needed something to orange. I have this stash of orange things. This orange is my branding color. I use orange in what I do. And I wanted to bring some orange to the presentation. And I looked at my stuff, and I picked up this thing that my husband had given me years before. And this is what it was. I love orange. This was an orange elephant with red socks. So it works in all kinds of ways. You never know how it's going to work. That's authenticity, when it keeps showing up in your life and it keeps reminding you that you're in partnership. And that's a relationship to me. You can't get any more authentic than that. So I don't know that that's 100%, because I don't listen every time the voice speaks to me. I miss a whole bunch of things that I'm preoccupied with life, the manufacturer stuff I'm supposed to be doing, but we're all human. That's what we do. But, I get there as close as I can and stay there as often as I like it when I'm there. And I have to find my way back sometimes when I get lost from it, but it's a far more joyful. It helps me keep the joy in my spirit. So that's what I love about authenticity. It's really the joy in your spirit and how you express yourself.
I'm going to ask you one more question, Norma, before you move on to your next segment. So this question was posted by Shubhra in the chat box. What if your conditioning does not allow you to listen to your inner voice? And if one doesn't trust their inner voice, then that's the challenge then becomes that authenticity becomes stunted right away.
Well, not only your authenticity gets stunted, your whole growth process gets stunted, because some of the growth, we all look for inner confirmations, whatever we do, however we get inner confirmations. When we ask the question, what am I going to wear? No one speaks out to you. You get a confirmation one way or another. So that is your voice speaking. So you are conditioned to listen. Maybe you're not conditioned to interpret it or to respect it. The challenge with that is that since it is always in partnership with it, you're losing the perspective of something that's very important. I have a friend of mine who is very proud person. And he has some personal issues that in his multiple decades of life he really hasn't faced, that are now he's having to face. And his statement is, well, I'm just going to do it myself. Well, how? That's only one perspective. So the inner voice is a perspective that you always need to have as part of your decision making. At least that's what I recommend. Otherwise, you have the decisions, you're getting perspectives from people who don't really know what's going on inside of you. And what I've learned over my years is that most people give you feedback and opinions and perspectives from their personal perspective, not necessarily from the perspective of what might be best for you. So if you're not able to really talk to yourself about it, that's the think part of the think, communicate, do. That's part of the think part. It's, thinking about it, evaluating. The communicate part is communicating with yourself, having a conversation with yourself. How do you make decisions without having a conversation with yourself? So that is your part of the universe. You don't know, you can't put yourself in a jar somewhere and lock it up. It exists in you. It's a part of you. So, you say you're not conditioned, maybe you're not conditioned to interpret it. So I'm just suggesting that there are multiple ways to interpret anything in life. And if you stick yourself with one way of interpretation, then, what a shame, because there's so many other ways to get a view of what might be the best path, the best decision, the best, but then that's my value system. So yours might be different. You're certainly entitled to.
Thank you, Norma, for that. Great. I think I've saved some of the other questions and I'll probably be back with them after your next segment.
And I have to make sure I save the chat box. It's like they're very interesting. So
Yes.
We have a very, very lively chat box.
No, we
Good,
definitely will save it. Yes, it's kind of on fire right now.
Wonderful. All right, so now we're in the outer voice. And the outer voice is how other people perceive you. Well, when you walk into a room, people make an immediate impression about who you are. They make an assumption. When I had my speaker bureau, after I had finished writing this, I met some veterans in the industry who told me the only way I could make money in the industry as a speaker is to talk about either health, relationships, or money. And when I looked at my grid, I said, wow, that's interesting, because my outer voice is just that: health, relationships, and money, net wellness, net worth, and net wealth. So that, from the society perspective, the manufactured life comes from how you do net wellness, net worth, and net wealth. So I've been asked the question before, why do I have the word net in front of each of them? Because in each of them, it is the sum total. So on the think side, it's net wellness. And I talk about holistic balance. And net wellness is net because it is not only the medical and dental, physical, exercise, nutrition, the water you drink, your spiritual health, your mental health, you know, so many aspects, the neck wellness, your well-being. And I have holistic balance because with my issues with the hole in my eardrum that I mentioned to you that came at age 8, and the 40 years of antibiotics, I ended up with a really bad case of Candida albicans. And I had totally no energy, had done all the tests that the medical doctors could give me, and they told me I was in perfect health. And then I decided to find a naturopathic perspective. And I found a homeopathic doctor who was both a medical doctor and homeopathic. And it was only through his year or two of treatment that I was able to overcome Candida albicans and regain my health and my wellness and my net wellness. So I don't know about in India, but I know in America, we're really moved towards a chemical world. The chemical world of antibiotics for 40 years totally, changed the ecology of my body. And as a matter of fact, I've been modifying. I change my diet pretty much every year. Every January, I reevaluate and make modifications because there's always something going on with my body. Always, and I always have multiple doctors doing something, figuring something out, and some things they can't even figure out. It's just my body is a. They've even written about some stuff in the medical journals. It's really strange, but that's why I've come to understand how important net wellness is. I've had a total of 13 surgeries, even though I look like a picture of health and act like it in many ways, but it's been a journey getting there. So I've learned a lot along the way about net wellness and the importance of using medical doctors for diagnosis for the most part, and more homeopathic measures or naturopathic measures, holistic measures for treatment. But what's important is that people understand, particularly in the Western world, particularly, that there are other objectives, other perspectives besides the chemical approach to health. And to also for everyone to understand the importance of nutrition in health. So my women in my family have died of digestive cancer, 3 of them. So with that information, I changed my diet, for several years so that I was eating cancer-free foods for the most part. Then I had my first bout of kidney stones, multiple stones in both kidneys. And I had to research what do I need to eat to combat kidney stone. And it was the very things I was eating to minimize cancer, which was for me, green leafy vegetables, nuts, and soy. So I had to stop all of that. And so I'm constantly modifying. So my point is, as you get older, to stay authentic, you have to also modify your diet based on your age needs and based on your body's needs. I've learned that when you turn 60, you have to your body starts telling you can't eat this anymore and you can't eat that anymore. And you turn 70 and then your organs start telling you, well, I'm the one that's going to give you some trouble if you don't watch out. So the main thing is to pay attention and to start early connecting with your net wellness and honoring it, because we all want longevity and the energy for the longevity. And having your net wellness and well-being that is balanced and integrated is very important for that. And that takes us to the communicate piece, which is network. And network is your relationships, your quality and quantity relationships, associations. Quality would be those people who are your best friends. They'll be authentic with you. They'll tell you when you're wrong, might really make you angry, but they will be honest with you. They'll be authentic with you. They will steer you in another direction. You need those in your life. You may not need a lot of them, but you need them that really know you and are not intimidated by you and have your best interest in heart. And you know that, and you can go to them whenever you need the advice that they can share with you. But then you also need your quantity relationships. You need a number of people that know you from wherever your circle is that you can reach out to if you're in need. So, maybe you're in a new area and you need to know where to find a shoe shine person or whatever, but you need a quantity. So all of you right now, even though I can't see you, I may be talking, I may read something and you may become in my quantity network, and who knows, maybe later we may become quality friends. That's how it works. You meet people, you network with them, you get to know them, and then some of them you become quality relationships with. And some people you have really tight relationships as soon as you meet each other. It's like an instant connection. So there's a lot of ways to look at that. Now, there's network is 3 ways to look at network. One is the network I'm talking about, quality and quantity relationships. Another is networking, meeting other people to expand your quantity relationships, so maybe they will become quality. And then there is the net of your work, the sum total of all the work that you've done. So when I first wrote this grid 30 years ago, or not, hasn't been that long ago, but as I was writing it over 30 years, I understood it as quality and quantity only. And it has expanded as the whole grid has and continues to expand, the more I get to understand it, because energy is always expanding to the networking and the net of your work. So it's multiple ways to look at network, but look at the fact that it's in the center of the grid. And what that essentially means is that you don't get much done in life and in the world unless you do have a network. Whether it's your quality or quantity, you need them in your life in order to move forward in life. So that's the value of network and why it's communicate, because you communicate to the world who you are by the people that you associate with. And one of the things we always recommend is to go around people who celebrate you, not those who just tolerate. Now, the bottom of the grid is net wealth, and net wealth is based on do. And the do means you have to do something, like inspiration was drive. You have to be driven to be inspired to do something. Motivation is driving. And in net wealth doesn't just mean money. Everywhere I go and I share, people say, I ask, what does net wealth mean to you? And they say the autopilot answer, which is money. And I suggest that net wealth means abundance and joy. I've met a lot of people along the way, especially when I had my speaker bureau, who had a lot of wealth from the money perspective, but had no joy. People that would go on stage and say one thing and live their lives in a different way. So in my view, net wealth is abundance and joy. When I ask people what brings you abundance and joy, their answers is things like family, relationships, spirituality, church, friends, even work sometimes, they would say. So what brings you abundance and joy, and how do you express it? How do you have it? How do you recognize it? How do you honor it? When you focus too much on money, sometimes you move away from joy. Of course, you need money. I don't want to, minimize that, but it's your attitude towards money. It's the energy that you put in money. It's the wisdom that you put in how you use your money, how you attain it, and how you use it. And so many different aspects to it. So it's important from an authenticity perspective to make sure that that side is balanced, and that you recognize that the true definition of net wealth is what brings you joy and abundance in life. And so now, are there any questions in this area? I will be happy to answer them.
Any questions? More like many questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's this aspect of, the outer world and how we're really going to be our authentic selves in the outer world. That seems to have triggered a lot of questions, and there are some specific questions. So when you were talking about the different dimensions of wellness and relationships and so on, I also remembered, and I can see that there were a couple of questions about building your own brand and business, which for coaches, those of us who are coaches, it's a lot about how we are in the outer world. Okay, so how do you stay authentic while at the same time building a brand, doing business development or selling? And is there a conflict between one's personal brand and really being authentic? Because sometimes it may feel that we are actually projecting a very well planned and well crafted and well polished version of oneself. So what's your take on that, Norma?
Well, my take on that is that if you are a coach, you want to be aligned with your authenticity. I don't know how. One of the things that I heard when I finished the WBEX presentation that I thought was interesting, 2 comments, was one person said, oh, now I know what it's like to not be a corporate coach and not coach like a corporate. So there are what I call cookie cutter programs and manufactured programs. And I'm obviously a proponent of the authentic programs that are not cookie cutter. And what that means is that, sure, you have to have structures and you have to have formats, you have to have all that stuff. But as humans, the challenge with the way the world is going is that it seems to be moving humans into more of an artificial intelligence, robotic way of living. I wrote a poem when I was 28 about how people robot their lives away. Life's a masquerade. People are wearing these masks, not being the person that they are. That was part of what drove me to this whole authenticity piece. And I'll be happy to share that poem later if you're interested. We have time, it's a few minutes long, but it talks about how people robot their lives away. You know, being someone on the outside, but not on the inside. And you know, research says that that's really what causes stress and cancer and all the things that make you drop dead. And you don't always realize it, and the push, push, push. You know, I'm older now, so I see the difference when they say older folks say, you know, the young folks just trying to run through and don't understand things. And it's really very, very true. They say the New England Journal of Medicine, the most productive decade of human life is between 60 and 70. The second most productive decade is 70 to 80. The third is 50 to 60, and the fourth is 80 to 90. So you really don't put all the pieces together until you're over 50, over 60, really. So anything under 50, you're really just practicing and going through and figuring out what the autopilot's like and doing the manufacture, doing what society says. Just like I mentioned, society says net wealth means money. So the manufactured life, the autopilot life, the one that's doing this, wearing the mask and not being the authentic person, is the one who's not, you know, who's confused, who doesn't know, who's trying to feel, who's living, who's creating a culture, who's staying in a culture that doesn't fit with what's happening on the inside. And that's why we coach people. We coach people because they're not aligned. And whether we call it that or however we do it, it has to do with that from some degree or another. So if you're not aligned, if you're doing something as a coach that's not aligned with who you truly are, then you're doing a disservice. And I'd love to talk to you because I have to be authentic, but that's what I do. But I would ask you to look at that. I would ask you to really examine yourself. And if you're the right profession, or maybe it's just time to pivot. It's time to make a change, time to shift. It's time to step into what your true authentic calling is. You'll be a lot happier. You know, when I talk about the next one, I'll talk about that a little bit and how you can go, because coach, you're addressing this, and really, this is what you really are. You're really expressive voice. When you're really coaching from your authentic self, then it's an expression of who you are. And you're speaking from your experience and from when I talk to speakers, I have them look at what your passion, experience, and expertise is. And as a coach, you should be the same thing, your passion, experience, and expertise. I have exercises I give you to help you recognize that, because you might have lost track of that when you were in those preschool years and someone told you don't talk so loud, or don't sing so loud, or don't try to do and make music so loud, because you're too much noise, and you might have forgotten, not been validated. But you know, it's time to overcome that and step into your true authenticity.
And what I want to ask you next, Norma, and this question also came in, is, which some people are curious about, is what would you look for in terms of the markers of authenticity, or the markers of not being authentic or being inauthentic in, let's say, your clients or your stakeholders?
Well, one thing I didn't mention is that while authenticity starts in the inner voice, it is strengthened when the inner voice and outer voice get the same message. They're saying the same thing. So you probably met people along the way who just seem out of sync, and you can't put your finger on it, but something about them, it's like they come to you and they say, you know, I'm really so happy today. And you know, they're not happy. They're not showing it, but there's something out of sorts with them. So that's how you can recognize it in other people. Chances are they're not in alignment with what their inner voice is telling them. These are people who maybe, like myself, I was like that for a while because I was a creative one born into a very traditional family. And I heard these voices at 8 years old, that I talked about freely. Like, who's this child? What's she talking about? So it was, it made me uncomfortable. So it took me a long time to get validated. So I had a lot of that, being the formal one, because that's how I was raised and the clothes that I was taught to buy, and I was taught to position myself. And really, I'm a little more informal. I'm far more comfortable, being just naturally, letting my spirit be comfortable, not be in the box that the traditional, that I understood traditional required it to be. So I was out of sync. But when I'm far better as a human being. I do better in my business. I do better in my relationships when I'm my authentic self. So I'm not fooling myself anymore. So I didn't know I was fooling myself before, and a lot of people don't. But when you recognize it, it's time to make the change. So that's how you recognize it in your clients. You see that something's kind of out of alignment. You may not sense what it is. The way that I work with it is I have an assessment that I give my clients, and I have a certain way of interpreting it that allows me to get 16 scores from it, that allows me to know how to work with them. And I have the 30 years that I studied authenticity, I wrote workbooks I call inventory. So what we don't do as human beings a lot is we don't reflect a lot. We just do. But I have these books, workbooks, and inventories help people to reflect. It gives them guided reflection activities. So I use that on them, and I, just go through the things that I've learned all these years, and the things that I teach and other coaches to do with their clients to help make a difference. So that's what I do, just take them through the process. And it's a process of a lot of conversation and communication. People don't do that, and helping them to reflect. And I have group meetings where they do it together. And that's what they say is the most valuable part, because they get to hear how other people have resolved similar situations. Because we don't get that. We're all going through our silos, going through our processes. So that's how I, help people get beyond that.
Norma, you mentioned that you do come across people sometimes who just seem out of sync when they're saying something, but the body language could be saying something else. How does it work, especially in today's circumstances when we are doing so much work online, because the pandemic is still on and many of us are still coaching online? So is there anything different that you would recommend that we look for?
Well, for me, it's still building rapport. It's still building a rapport and going into the inner workings of the person that you're working with. You just may do it. You just may ask different questions. I have a particular gift. I'm an empath. I can feel people differently. So everybody doesn't have that gift. So that's kind of how I use Zoom. I feel their answers. So I ask questions in a way, and I also, my coaching is always aligned with the universe and just listen. And then listening and feeling and asking and probing questions, and then listening within. My a lot of my coaching answers come from creating a spirit-to-spirit relationship with my clients. So that my spirit speaks to their spirit, speaks to my spirit, and then I can give it back to them. And to me, I think coaching is a lot of that, whether we recognize that or not. A lot of coaches I meet are empaths. So whether we recognize how it works within us or not, I think that's one of the skills that we use. And if you don't recognize you have that skill, you very likely may, but just not know it and not know how to use it. So
there's a very interesting question from Ashok in the chat box about the differences in observed authenticity across generations. So he asks, is Gen Z, which displays genuine social connect, are they more authentic than previous generations who faced dominant lifestyle needs and survival aspects? So, the priorities and the pressures were different across generations. So does Generation Z come across as more authentic?
Well, how they come across, varies, from culture to culture and just from group to group. As a generalized group, both groups are seeking authenticity. The older ones are realizing how manufactured their lives were, and therefore they're seeking now to find, well, who am I? You know, I gave it up for the corporate environment. You know, I've done some work where I've been in corporate environments where I see dogs there, and I see them coming in all times of the day and night. And so I know corporate environment is changing. And so the younger generations have turned Maslow's theory upside down. You know, Maslow's theory says, you know, you want shelter and food and stuff first, and you want self-actualization last. Well, the younger generation wants self-actualization first. So they want authenticity first before they want food. They'll, you know, the food will come to them in one way or another, much. So it's equal, but just from different perspectives. So what now from a generational, from a timeline perspective, where we are historically, the research of I can't remember his name right now. It may come to me later, but he has a book called Pendulum, and he's a literary agent. And he says that his research says that for the last 3,000 years, that the pendulum shifts every 40 years, that we have 40 years where the pendulum is shifting towards me, and 40 years, that's we. So where we are right now is in the we cycle. And in the 40 years of we, it started in 2003. So the first 10 years is the gradual transition from the me to we. So that was 2003 to 2013. So 2013 to 2033 is the saturation. And we're right in the middle of it right now, is the saturation of the we. And when I heard him talk about this, the word he used to most express the we in this cycle is authenticity. And so we collectively, particularly if you look at 2020 and all the things, you know, COVID brought a we together in a brand new way. The Black Lives Matter brought together we together in a brand new way globally. And there were other things that, obviously I know the things more in the United States, but there are multiple things internationally that brought us together. Look at Zoom, look at where I'm at for 5 o'clock in the morning, you guys in the evening, and we're here together. Our grandparents didn't know that you could, at the click of a button, see somebody halfway across the world in this time zone. So, you know, the world changes so fast. So where we are as a society in the whole timeline, we're heavy into authenticity right now. So that's why it's discussed so much. That's why it's so dominant in the conversation. So I think I may have jeered from the question, but I hope I answered it.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think these were the questions for this segment, and I'll be back with more once we're done with segment 3.
Okay, so now we're on the expressive voice. So the expressive voice is who you have become in the world and how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. So the first horizontal on that is legacy. And legacy has to do with not what you leave to your heirs, but what the gifts and talents that were given to you at the time we were born. What gifts and talents were poured into you. I talk about it from 3 perspectives. The one is your spiritual gifts, and spiritual gifts are generally categorized as speaking, signifying, and serving gifts. And you can research that very easily on Google or any other place. And then there is physical gifts. Now, physical is not an area people have always looked at as area of gifts. But in my research, you know, the gift that the body that you are in is a gift. What color it is, what size it is, what shape it is, what nationality it is. You think of someone like Shaquille O'Neal, who is a huge basketball player in America. I'm assuming maybe you know who he is. And he's like 7 feet tall and, you know, huge guy. And I mean, he couldn't want to be a ballerina. You know, probably fall at the bottom of the, you know, that would not necessarily work for him. But as a basketball player, it's a beautiful thing. And then there's Simone Biles, who's the little gymnast from the Olympics from the last year or this year. And she was a little itty bitty thing. She couldn't be a basketball player. So they took advantage of the body that they were in. I learned that, at least in America, 300% of the youth get plastic surgery to change their nose or their ears or something about their body. And it's a common practice. And I think from a values integrity perspective, that's a shame to give children that value at such a young age. But That's a parent's choice. And then there's also what I call the wisdom gifts. The wisdom gifts is the one that I speak about most frequently. It's based on the work of Dr. Howard Gardner, who around 50 years ago researched how children learn and created what he calls the multiple gifts of intelligence theory, 9 ways that children learn in a way as a hope that teachers would change how they teach. So I'm going to tell them to you briefly. You can write them down. And what I suggest to people is that the area of your focus in your life, the area of your work and business, you are happiest if it's one of the top 3 gifts that you possess. So I mentioned I was going to mention something about this. This is what I was going to refer to. And that's when you know your natural gifts and talents, when you're clear on what those are. If you're doing one of those top 3 in your life, you're probably pretty happy. And if you're not, then you want to shift your life so that you're doing something that comes natural. That's one of your top 3 gifts. I call them wisdom gifts because as I see them, they're the source and the nature of how you think, the nature of how you see the world. So write them down. One is verbal/linguistic, people who like words, spoken and written and otherwise. Visual spatial, people who like color. They're also very good at putting things together like puzzles or interior designers or draftspersons. Bodily kinesthetic, people who like to move around. They are your dancers, your athletes, people who move. The naturalistic, people who like to be outside, landscapers, people that design things from the outside, and just like they learn by being outside. Musical, people who like sound, they like music, they like beat and rhythm. Mathematical, logical, people who not only who like numbers, but who also like they can see the big picture and they can be very logical. Interpersonal, people who like other people. They like to be around others. They're kind of gregarious, maybe your salespeople. And then intrapersonal, people who learn by going within, your mystics, your monks, your pastors, your counselors. And then there's existential. Now, existential was not recognized when he first published this part, but now so many children are being born who are existential. And existential is the woo-woo, I call it woo-woo part of life. The unseen things, the energy healers. Some of you may be energy healers. People who talk to animals, people who see the world a little differently. That's existential. So those are the 9 wisdom gifts, as I call them. And if you prioritize them into your top 3 and ask yourself if you are using them in your life, you can determine, you can see how happy or unhappy you may be in what you do on a day-to-day basis. So that's gifts and talent, natural gifts and talents. Next is likability. And likability is the one where I've grown and still growing in quite a bit. When I first did this, I looked at likability as personality. And 2 years ago, I had a gentleman in my program who was an introvert. He says, well, you know, I'm likable, but I don't have a lot of personality. So since then, I've been having a lot of conversation about how people perceive likability. And some call it empathy, some call it compassion. One person from WBEX defined it as what people say about you when you leave a room. So that could determine your likability. It's also your ability to how you build rapport with people, but essentially just how you get along with people, how they get along with you, and how you show your best, most likable person, most likable self, most likable energy to the world, how you put it out there in the world as a way to create balance and alignment with yourself, still being authentic though. And then the last one is lifestyle, which is your habits, your day-to-day habits, how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. And what we suggest after you understand the grid is that you tweak one thing. You identify which item, which dimension in the grid might be where you're most vulnerable. I don't use the word weakness, I use the word vulnerable. And what one thing in your life might you tweak to make life a little bit more authentic for you? So as an example, I work from home and I had a meeting once about several miles away. And on the way home, it was rush hour traffic. And I found myself on a popular street and I counted 5 lights to go 1 block. And I'm just not that patient to sit in a car and waste the time to wait 5 lights to just progress 1 block. And I realized I could make a series of right and left turns. I could tweak one thing, make a series of right and left turns, and I would still get home. I'd have a more scenic route. It would be adventurous. It might even be fun. And I could get home and not be stuck in that traffic and save a lot of time. So what one thing can you tweak in your inner voice or your outer voice or your expressive voice? Now, by the way, authenticity really shines when your inner voice, your outer voice, and your expressive voice are all aligned, all doing the same thing, all moving in the same direction. So let me pause here and take questions. And then I also want to just share with you that this is the original grid that I have designed. And now I have multiple other ones. I have one for corporate culture. I have one that I call my dignity grid that helps organizations create authentic inclusion within their organization. I have a sales grid to energize your sales and an engagement grid to increase more impact in your organization. And we're putting together an authentic leadership program that teaches all of those grids in one program. And I will be looking for facilitators and coaches who might want to be a part of that, particularly in other countries. So I'm looking for people that might want to reach out and learn more. So what do you have for me now?
Yeah. This is fun. Okay. There's been a fair amount of discussion in the chat box on the name of the book and the authors. So is it Pendulum by Roy Williams and Michael Drew by any
Michael
chance?
Drew, that's my guy.
That's the one. Yeah. So Anil, great find. All credit goes to you for finding it out. Yeah. So I'm going to post the full name of the book. So Norma is this is the full title, right? Pendulum: How past generations shape our present and predict our future. That's the complete title. So I hope we got that right. And so as a follow-up question to that, are there any further readings on this subject that you would recommend? Because we can put them all in the chat box and the audience.
The only other one someone might want to look up is the work of Dr. Howard Gardner and Multiple Gifts of Intelligence Theory. He has several books out, and they may be older.
Dr. Howard?
Dr. Howard Gardner, Gardner, Multiple Gifts of Intelligence Theory.
Okay, I put it in the chat box. I hope the spelling's correct.
Gardner. Gardner.
Gardner, okay, Dr.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Got that, great. Okay, there was also a question that came in from Reshma. Yes. How do you manage authenticity in the workplace, especially if this value is not appreciated by stakeholders?
Well, that's why we're beginning to go into corporate America with the grid now, developing the Authentic Leadership Program. I think that our approach is to start with the organizations who are interested in it. And I know how companies get, one thing works, everybody wants it. So that's the approach that we're taking, to just begin to share it. And I have we're looking for partners to work with us on this to take it to corporations that are ready for it. And we're taking it from the leadership perspective, and to teach the leaders the authenticity grid as an individual, and then to expand their understanding to understand the energies and how they apply to diversity and authentic inclusion, how they apply to sales. So it's kind of a comprehensive approach, and ideally to help them in the organization in the total organization in that area. But it's just changing the mindset. A lot of organizations are ready for this, given the changes that have occurred in the last year with the virus and what have you. So it's just a matter of identifying them and showing them a safe way that, the value that happens when authenticity comes. So there's so much research about self-awareness. What authenticity teaches is self-awareness from multiple perspectives. And there's so much research on how it works and how valuable it is. So it works in there just by getting the organization to be ready to do it and to teach the leaders so that they can then share it with the others.
Yeah, on that subject of leadership, Norma, so there was a couple of questions on authenticity in leadership. So how do we help leaders show up more authentically as opposed to behaving how they think they're supposed to behave?
Let me just show you something. This is my Authentic Leadership book, and it is on Amazon. So you can definitely write that down for engagement, authentic leadership, and it's available through Amazon. So you help leaders by helping them recognize their vulnerabilities first. You know, what I learned, I've never worked in corporate except for a short time that I worked as a consultant, but I was spared that, thank goodness. But helping them to recognize that their own vulnerabilities first, because nobody's perfect. So leadership is strengthened when you know where your vulnerabilities are and you set your team so that your gaps are met, because there are certain needs that you have no matter what. I mean, it's just all of us. One thing about the authenticity grid, I have an assessment that goes with it. And when people do the assessment and get there and understand their scores, it helps them see where their gaps are and what they need on their team in order to create more success. So, for example, a leader who is a heavy thinker and heavy into their head and planning is not as good with getting it done. So they need on their team people who will get it done. So that allows the gaps to be met. Authenticity is about knowing what your gaps are and finding a way to either tweak yourself toward them or bring people on your team into your life or systems into your life or just some way to fulfill your gaps. Some things you have to do. If you can't cook, you have to either go find some food, you got to learn how to cook, you got to do something. You open a can, you got to do something. There are pros and cons and consequences with every choice you take. So authenticity is examining what are the choices in front of me and what are the pros and cons and what's the payoff, what's the benefit, and which do I choose? Which is going to be best for me? And it's not getting in a rut so that it gets autopilot for so long that 20 years from now, it's no longer effective and you haven't revisited it. So it's a continuation of just recognizing where you're authentic and shifting and how because life shifts. Your life can shift in 4 directions in one day. So your authenticity might shift right along with it. But how do you shift with? How do you flow with it? Someone you asked boundaries before, and sometimes boundaries get fluid because sometimes boundaries can't be hard and fast because situations, how do you flow with the situation? Authenticity is being able to know the difference, how you can flow with it and when you have to be steadfast.
And you talked about it's about finding the gaps. So as a coach, Norma, since you also said that you're an empath, I guess you've developed your own style of being able to call out the gaps, and and still being kind to the client. But for coaches who may be wanting to get started on this, what would you recommend for them? Are there any tips on how they can spot the gaps, call out the gaps?
Well, spotting the gaps through conversation. Now, I do have an assessment, and you can go to giftsfromnorma.com, and there's a gift that you can take my authenticity assessment at no charge. And then I offer a score interpretation class on December the 10th. I'm having it. I'll be doing them twice a week, but once you take the assessment, you'll get notices of when I'm doing them. So the assessment is a free assessment you're going to take, and there are one question on each of the 9 dimensions that I just talked about. And then in the score interpretation class, I show you how to interpret your scores and understand them. And then also other opportunities you can get to facilitate and be able to use this in your practice. So other than that, it's a matter of just discerning as you talk to people, where their gaps lie. When you talk to your clients, you learn what their gaps are. You hear it in their voice, you hear it in their conversation, you learn it. So, there's 2 focuses of coaching, whether you go strength-based or vulnerability-based. So how do you use the strengths to fill the gaps? How do you use the strength? You got to know what your gaps are, where you're vulnerable. Otherwise, you fall in that pitfall over and over and over. So how many times do you want to fall in it? Where's the Band-Aid? Where's the suture? What are you going to do? Are you going to call a doctor? Are you going to sew it up? Are you going to just get You're going to get crutches. There's choices. So every choice has consequences, has pros and cons. So authenticity is being able to recognize your options and identify the ones most effective. That to me is filling your gap. Having the options to be a gap filler, know what the options are to fill the gaps, and even know where the gaps lie before sometimes they're revealed. Sometimes gaps you don't know what they are. They don't reveal themselves till something else happens, and then, oh yeah, here's a shortcoming I have. How do I fill this gap? How do I fix this situation? What decision do I make? So at least you begin to know you can fill gaps easier because you know yourself better, and you know what your parameters are. So that's where you become more authentic.
So is there a situation or a scenario where it's okay to be inauthentic? This was also there in the chat box.
Well, sometimes you have to. Sometimes, sometimes your authentic self may want to, beat your husband up because he pissed you off or something. I don't know, but you're not going to do that. You're going to set your boundaries. You're going to set what's your, I mean, then how do you draw the line? What's authentic and what's not? If authenticity comes from an interpretation of your sensory perspectives, where do you draw the line? That's where your values come. So, and your values may modify sometimes, someone who never would shoot a gun might shoot one if there was an intruder or something, if they had one. I mean, that's an extreme examples, but I think they drive the point home. We have to all be intelligent about how we choose to live our lives, and intelligent about authenticity as well. There's no hard, fast rules. That's one of the things about it. It's not like in the box that's there. The box that I created there is growing. It's expanded. Authenticity is like that. It's, sometimes the lines are fuzzy, but that's where values and common sense comes in. And one of the things I include in my definition of authenticity is a focus on the common good. It's not a focus just on the me. It's a focus on the we, what's good for the society. So that's another, it's a value, of course, but it's how I value and how I define authenticity. So any decision you're making would be for the common good is what my assumption, my understanding.
And when it comes to authenticity for leadership, Norma, what would you say as coaches we could mention to our stakeholders and leadership as the primary good or benefit that being authentic can do for a leader?
Well, I think the greatest benefit is just the issue of self-awareness, to recognize the humanness. One of the things they talk about for the future and where we're going is that humans will forget what it means to be human. If you look at it now, so much of the manufactured life that is being put on us makes us more robotized. If nothing else, I mean, COVID is a great example. They're telling us what you must do. Where they're robotizing us in this stuff. You look at the lines, we're in line. Give me the shot. Give me the shot. Give me the shot. So one of the other things that we do in life that slowly but surely are moving us to a more robotic life. I remember when I was in college, when I first started understanding being identified by a number. So in college, you weren't a name anymore, you were a number. It's like, what is this? So, I mean, I understand the need to have structure in life. I clearly get that. But where does the need for structure interfere with the ability to be authentic? And where do we choose the robot life over our own authenticity? And how many times have we chosen it? How many times have our clients chosen it without even realizing we made that choice? So therefore, the unconscious part of us is being robotized that we don't even realize what's happening. Like I wrote in my masquerade poem so many years ago, I saw people roboting their lives away. They robot their lives away. How did we get this masquerade, this parade of people playing people, this charade of life's reality? So that's what I wrote when I was 28. And then I took all those years to write a program that actually dealt with that. And now I'm seeing it everywhere I go. The research says before long, we're going to need companies that help people remember what it's like to be human.
Thank you, Norma. Turning the session back to you and to Anu.
So, Norma, we have about 36 minutes left. So how would you want to take this forward? In fact, there's an interesting question also, which I saw we've gone top down, column wise. So is there an interpretation also on a horizontal plane
Oh yeah, Arvind's
for
question.
your
I missed that. Sorry.
for your grid?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I know people are being innovative to say, is it even a diagonal interpretation, or is it a bottoms up interpretation? So
Well,
so with that, and also I knew that we wanted to do some interactive breakout rooms. So how do you want to plan this forward, Norma?
well, let me first explain and see if there are any questions on the horizontal.
Sure, sure.
And so think, communicate, do. I mentioned to you earlier that the think has to do with things that you were born with. You were born with a sixth sense. You were born with DNA. You were born with natural gifts and talents. How do you use them? How do you develop them? How do you treat them? What do you think about them? So the main thing with think, communicate, do is to get things done effectively. It's a three-step process. First to think about it, then communicate, and then to do. So I use this in multiple ways. I even use this when I'm writing speeches. So first I give the think, which is the philosophy, the premise, and then I communicate with the story or something, and then I do. I give a call to action. So it's a foundation, really. This whole grid is a foundation for life once you understand it and understand how to use it. So again, the top horizontal is think, because those are things you were born with. The communicate is how you show up in the world. You show up through your values. You show up through the people that you surround yourself. You show up with your personality and how you build rapport with people. And the do is how you get things done, through your inspiration, through your net wealth, through earning income, and through the habits that you practice on a day-to-day basis. So that's the grid in a nutshell. And it works in very magical, mysterious ways. And you mentioned about horizontal. I've always wanted to do research in what I say the different patterns I see. So some people's scores end up where their highest scores give them a T shape. So they're thinkers, outer voice thinkers is what I call them. And so inner voice thinkers is the top and the left. And then you have the L shape, the outer expressive voice doers. So I haven't done that research yet. I haven't had the opportunity of putting together in so many aspects of it. But that is a research that I definitely want to do and want to see, what the meanings might be in those. So my curiosity is growing on that. So thanks for mentioning that. Other questions? Would you like me to answer questions, or would you guys like to break up and talk about it in some groups? It's up, I'm someone says spellbound. So I would be, thank you. I would be happy to share more if you're interested, but whatever suits you, suits me.
So is there any questions that you'd like to trigger in the breakout room? So we do have time. We have about 33 minutes, and I think we did plan breakout room. So
Right.
questions, I think Tushima has managed to cover a lot of ground with the question, and I'm sure there will be more. So if you like, we can kind of break people out. So if there's anything that you particularly want people to discuss during the breakout rooms, I think we can comfortably do a 15-minute breakout room if everybody's comfortable with that, and then we can come back.
That'd be fine. And I'll pop into the rooms once you get into them. So. And
is there anything specific that you would want them to be discussing in their breakout rooms?
Well, I think just what's impacted you most today? What are you thinking about now that you've heard this perspective on authenticity and on society in general? So what most stands out for you? So.
Okay. So if that's good for everyone, I think Nimish will kind of just create the rooms, and we'll invite everybody to kind of accept the rooms that you would go into. And I think it would be a good sharing that everybody could have, and then nominate one person within your room who could come back and briefly share. And I think the collective wisdom would really enrich us further. So I really look forward to you participating in those breakout rooms, discussing, and then coming back and sharing with us, and then we take things forward. And then we can move into the segment of whatever you discussed in the breakout rooms. If you could have a brief sharing from every room. and then we could take the final set of questions if we still have some for Norma. And then each leader of the room, if we can just take about a minute or two and share the highlight of your discussion in your breakout rooms.
And put 2 links in. For one is for my gifts, giftsfromnorma.com. And some of you in the breakout room said you wanted to talk with me about learning more and getting deeper into authenticity. So if you are someone who'd like to learn more about my programs and what have you, then you can go to meetwithnorma.com and we'll find a time and we'll have a conversation.
Sure. Excellent. That's lovely. And everybody does also already have your LinkedIn link that was shared with everybody in.
Yes, I've seen some come in already. So
yeah. So people can get in touch with you directly for that as well. So
wonderful. So I'd like to get some feedback. I stepped into a couple rooms, but I missed most of them.
Yeah,
I think I was in 3 rooms briefly. But so I'd love to hear some feedback, especially from the ones I did not get into, or even the ones I did. So who would like to share?
Yeah. So as you're finishing with the feedback poll, please feel free to room-wise share for us, all of us. What did you discuss? What was your one takeaway from your breakout room? So anyone can go ahead, raise your hand, and let's share.
Okay, we got Chitra.
I think it was just so fantastic, Norma, and thank you for this. What we really looked at is a couple of things that was so meaningful for us. Personally, that whole thing about managing the energies that live within you. Often, I have noticed that with clients, there are things that I really want to share, and then I really watch and wait and see how important and useful it is for that space and for the client. And making that choice is important. I think that's one thing that came alive for me. I think one of the others, Arvind, I think you spoke about, gosh, I've forgotten. I'm being very authentic and saying I've forgotten, but there were 2 very important things that came out in our room from a person called Patri and Arvind. And one of them was, Arvind, why don't you all come in?
Yeah. So they're all there in the room.
I think
so
you can come in and I don't have to take take the lead for this. So go ahead and go for it.
Please go ahead.
So I had just 2 things. One was looking at the number of people in relationships. I think we largely focus on the quality of relationships, but I think this time it's probably a good way to think about relationships also in the number of people that we touch or we know of, or we know about. Also speaks about our own lives and what we do. So I think that was a very, very good takeaway for me. And the other one was essentially, I'm just trying to figure out what the last one was. Also, that's I can't remember. Right. But I think this one was a big takeaway.
So Mr. Patri is also here. So do you remember, or let's move to? Oh, he's here. Okay.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
See, this program looked a lot to me. It's like beyond logic, the inner work of a coach. See, as a coach, though I've been a PCC, I'm always under pressure to produce results with the coachee. So this gives a strong example of how you create a space within which the results are produced, and you are not in a hurry to taking the responsibility in producing results. And this is something you value inside out rather than just saying something else. And also some of the great examples she gave in terms of intuition, integrity, and inspiration. was just like a breakthrough for me. So this was a profound experience this evening. And thank you.
Quite welcome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Yes. Anyone else wants to share any of the other groups?
Mala in the corner. Yes.
Yes, Mala. Yeah.
So I absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, I missed about 20 minutes in the beginning. So I was in a room with Elena and Ida, and we basically said that, you know, how we often just the word authenticity, we use it so casually today. Everyone's saying be authentic, you know, the corporates are saying authenticity, and it's used so casually. This grid just absolutely brings it to life. It breaks it down. It's, you know, Elena mentioned the scientific format. It sort of puts a science, a method to it, and it gives so much more clarity. So that's what we absolutely loved about this. Elena, please add if you have anything to add to this. We also spoke about the sync of the three voices and how the need to pay attention on that, really. And I think as a takeaway, I would say what I loved was, you know, don't robot your life away, or people tend to robot. I mean, that's going to live with me. And the fact that a last thought is, as coaches, Norma, you said that we help our clients to find a sense of alignment, you know, with their goals, and we help them to get aligned. We coach them, but how can we then? We are doing a disservice if we ourselves are not aligned with who we are and what we want to do. That's what stayed with me.
Yes, thank you for that. That is so important that you are aligned, because as a coach, I was shared in one of the rooms that I have a phrase that I've said for years: if the people lead, the leaders will follow. But I'm thinking on changes. If the coaches lead, the leaders will follow. So coaches, lead from your heart, lead from your authentic self, so the leaders will follow. If you asked earlier, how do you help leaders in organizations? You be the example. You be the example of authenticity, and then show them what it looks like. And then you can help teach them how to do it, how to be it.
Right. Thank you, Norma.
Yeah, beautiful. Very nicely put.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else has anything more to share? Any other questions that you would want to pose? To Shima, do we have any further questions in the chat?
I'm
Yes,
Johnny.
Johnny. Yes, Johnny.
I just love this manufactured and robotic life. I think that was so powerful.
Correct.
It just hit me like a thunderbolt, and it was. Thank you, Norma, for that awakening, if I may say so. It was a deep awakening from my deep slumber.
Well, welcome home. Waking up is a powerful thing. So congratulations. That's important. I did my job. Good.
Thank you.
Good. My pleasure. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Yeah, robotic life. Yes. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. I'm going to take the copy of the chat box so I can read them later. There's far too many to even try to even look at now. But how much time is left, Anu?
We have 6 minutes. So I really like to kind of take this opportunity to thank you, Norma. Thank you for really putting in so much of life into that, right? And everybody should realize that this is a rug that she's made herself, right?
Yes.
And it's so beautifully come together. And I think all the pieces so beautifully have come together in that one fabric. So very well done.
Thank you.
As we are saying this, Norma, is there anything that we haven't asked you as yet, which you may be dying to tell us?
No, I think we've covered everything, and I appreciate all of the different, all the comments and the feedback. It's been delightful, and it was definitely worth. I don't even feel like it's 6:25 in the morning, so so I've enjoyed. You've kept me very much awake and very much alive. So yeah, it's been my pleasure. If there's time, I'm happy to share my poem if you guys want to hear it.
Oh, lovely. Yes. And
okay.
With that, as you do that, I also would, maybe you could email me the references people have still asked for the names of the books and references. Is there any further reading that you could recommend?
Yes.
When we sent out the communication or the CCUs, I think we can send that information out. I will definitely want that reference of your book also. So I'm sure people would love to kind of know more. And over to you, we would love to hear your poem.
Well, the poem is called The Masquerade, and I wrote it again when I was 28 years old. And you'll see at the end of it, the question I ask is actually how I ended up spending my life in the journey of understanding about how we got this masquerade. And I haven't recited it in a while, so I might be a little rusty, but I'll do the best I can. So have you ever been to a masquerade to see the parade of people playing people? What a charade! How can you go to a masquerade if you do not know your role or soul? It's paradoxical, but they hide so well, you know. Watch the parade, there they go, each playing their role, dealing with their soul so paradoxically. The Messiah, the Pope, the Lord of dreams and hope, who walks and talks in circles. He really sees reality, afraid of its dichotomy. He wastes his life on dope. Madame Mastermind, goddess of womankind, her only hope, a man to find. As far as anyone can see, fares well with life's reality, but drinks her life away. Squire of looks and aggressor, open pockets, true aggressor. Objective, not to be the lesser, dealing with reality by working life away. Insecure and nervous lady, appearances are often shaky. Reality is a little hazy. She seriously finds it crazy. She smokes her life away. Mind maker, memory machine, Christ of creativity through Christianity. Political machinery, frustrated by reality, he prays his life away. Angel of sunlight, ministry's delight, always does just what's right, lives in her own reality, and with its ambiguity, she spends her life in flight. The chanters, the gossip gabbers, the dichotomous monotony, don't even know reality. They do not feel, they do not see, they do not care, they will not be. Robot their lives away. Who finds peace? Those who cannot see, or those who want to be able to deal with life's reality. Who is free from life's reality? The dichotomous monotony, or those who in their soul can see what reality can be. How did we get this masquerade, this parade of people playing people, this charade of life's reality? So that's the masquerade. That's what got me started on my journey. Yeah, thank you.
That was so beautiful, so profound.
Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea that I'd spend the rest of my life figuring out how did we get this masquerade and what do we do about it? So at least I got the answers. So some answers. So you guys can get some of the rest and work with it.
Where is your poem published, Norma?
It's not. I have copies here and I recite them sometimes when I work, but I really have not published it. I guess I should do that sometime soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it has been a joy. I have certainly enjoyed. I did put my information on there, giftsfromnorma.com, if you want to take the assessment and join me on the 10th. And then meetwithnorma.com if you'd like, if you're serious and want to learn more about my programs that I offer and maybe help me teach and coach with this program. So it's been a joy. I appreciate all your comments. I can't wait to read them. I'm traveling to Mexico for the holidays. Tomorrow's our Thanksgiving Day, and I will print them and read them on my traveling. And I love to read that. So thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah. If you're not saving them yourself, I can send them to you as well. So there are a whole host of thank yous and a lot of gratitude and a lot of hearts and claps. So thank you so much for doing this. We have another 15 minutes. So if you all have the energy, the time and the space to be able to stay back to share, please, you can put your cameras on, and it's a freewheeling session if you're interested. I really like to thank you again, Norma. It was a pleasure. Absolutely wonderful. I think from what you've said, I think there could be multiple sessions which we can continue to do with you. And maybe we will kind of get better timing for you as well. So, if you're game, I think people here have really enjoyed listening to you. So I'm sure they will be looking forward to some more. So with that, I
I'd be
thank
delighted.
everyone and I thank you.